Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our latest seminar on the seed cotton program. It's nice to see you here. We appreciate the courtesy of Southern Generous to give us this facility and this time slot to continue to try to provide you information on this. And when I say brand new program, I'm talking about brandy new program. The bill was signed into law on February the 9th. Which happened to coincide with the start of the National Cotton Council's annual meeting. So that was a good start for our annual meeting. I wish all annual meetings could start off that successfully. But it's a pleasure for us to be able to provide you the information that we have available based on the way our interpretation of the law. And I would put that as a caveat because obviously in any legislation, particularly in farm program legislation, the ultimate implementation provisions are dictated by the regulations and the implementation of the law by the Farm Service Agency, and this one will be no different. I will give you, as far as background is concerned, and by the way, my title is Vice President, Producer Affairs with the National Cotton Council. I work with the producer segment. This is a very significant event for the U.S. cotton industry. The Cotton Council and the cotton industry have been working to try to get cotton back in to Title I of the current Farm Bill, and we're in the 2014 Farm Bill. We're getting ready to start working on the next Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill. In fact, it's literally going on as we're speaking. But it was really important for us to try to get back in to the last year of this Farm Bill. And this program we're getting ready to describe to you is in effect for the 2018 crop, the crop you're getting ready to plant. And it does amend the Farm Bill and make some significant changes, and will make some significant changes in your operation. We believe it was very significant to get in this Farm Bill to not only to give you some economic support for this crop year, but to pave the way and make our path easier as we attempt to remain in Title I now of the next Farm Bill. So, and the other point is that this seed cotton program, and this is a term you're gonna get more and more familiar with, seed cotton, is the preferred program that we're promoting for the next Farm Bill. So in effect, we were able to get in a year early, and for implementation purposes, for budget purposes, it's very significant. So we feel quite fortunate. We thank the great efforts of Senator Thad Cochran of Mississippi, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, who spearheaded this effort on the Senate side. Chairman Mike Conaway, Texas, the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, led the efforts in the House, along with several members of the House Appropriations Committee and the Ag Committees, several senators also, Senator Bozeman from Arkansas, Senator Cornyn from Texas. A lot of members, a lot of Cotton Belt members are responsible for helping us use this vehicle. And the vehicle that was used was the Budget Act that passed on February the 9th that included a supplemental disaster bill. And the supplemental disaster bill was the main vehicle that we tacked on to get the cotton program. There was also some changes in the dairy program. And that's significant for the areas of the country that were affected by the recent hurricanes last year and the wildfires. So there is significant funding in that bill for that. We won't talk about that today, but as one of that was the legislative vehicle that was used to implement seed cotton for the 2018 crop. Marjorie was passing out to you a handout that's got a slide presentation. It's basically the slide presentation that you're going to see here today. We may not go over every one of those slides in detail, but Jody will point out where we are in that process. We think that this presentation and this slide presentation will be very useful for you. It's got some matrix in it I think will help explain the benefits of this program and some of the decisions that you have to make coming up this year. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Dr. Jody Campeachy, the Vice President of Economics and Policy Analysis with the National Cotton Council, and she'll proceed with this presentation. We'd like to wait and take questions at the end. We can stay here as long as you want taking questions, but if you'll hold your questions to the end, I think that would be the most productive way to get the meeting. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jody.
All right. So as Craig mentioned, you can follow along, and just one second. I'm going to delete my first slide so that all of our numbers should match up now. So if you see slide numbers, do you see number 1 at the bottom of yours? You have number 2? Okay, I give up. I should have just left it. Okay, so I'm glad that all of you decided to come and listen to this today. It's very important, and you're going to have some decisions that you're going to need to make in the coming months ahead. And I know some of you have already listened to the webinars, and some of you, this is new. I will point out, if it's a first time hearing it, it might seem a little confusing. Sometimes it takes quite a few times of listening to it. We do have audio of all the webinars that we've conducted so far. We had 8 webinars, and that is it's on the National Cotton Council website, and then it's also on our YouTube page. We will also have video of today's presentation on there as well. So again, if you listen to something today, but then you want to go back and review it, you can go look at the other webinars. And we have questions and answers at the end of all those webinars. We will have a document that we'll put together that has all those frequently asked questions and answers. So again, it'll be on our website. If you think about things later, you can go check there. Okay, so seed cotton is designated as a covered commodity eligible for Title I, PLC, and ARC programs in the 2014 Farm Bill, and this is going to begin with the 2018 crop. And seed cotton refers to unginned upland cotton, and that includes both lint and cotton seed. The reference price is set at 36.7 cents per pound. And we're going to go into detail about how that's calculated, because if you don't know anything about the seed cotton program, you probably don't really like 36.7 cents per pound. But it's not the program that you've been used to. Okay, the price floor is set at 25 cents a pound. Okay, so to get the seed cotton marketing year average price that's going to be used in the calculations for ARC and for PLC, we take the weighted average of the upland cotton lint price and the cottonseed price. And these are based on annual shares of production. So this will change on an annual basis. So the lint marketing year average price and the cottonseed marketing year average price that goes into this calculation, along with the U.S. lint production and U.S. cottonseed production, all will change on an annual basis. And these are all U.S. numbers. They're not regional. It's not based on your own farm. To calculate this price, it's based on U.S. numbers. Then the marketing year average lint price and the marketing year average cottonseed price are products of NASS, so the National Ag Statistics Service. They publish these prices monthly. And the cottonseed price in particular comes from the Jennings report and from a Gen survey. But we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. Okay, so the marketing year average price for each marketing year is not final until we get to the end. And the marketing year runs for cotton from August 1st through July 31st. Now, NASS publishes those prices at the end of the marketing year, but it takes them a couple months. And usually they're not published until about the end of September, early October. So what that means is that the payment from the program occurs the October of the following year. So for the 2018-19 crop, which is what this will be eligible for, the payment would not be dispersed until October of 2019. And again, that's because that's how the marketing year average prices are calculated. And that's for all other commodities too. It's not just cotton. So that's how it works. And if you've had ARC and PLC programs for other covered commodities, you know that the payments come, in October of each year. Okay, one other thing, USDA does publish monthly estimates of these prices. Once we get into the 2018 crop year, we'll start tracking those. We'll provide a document on the NCC website where you can go look at that monthly to see what the prices are. We'll have the lint price, the cottonseed price, and then the combined seed cotton price. However, we won't have that until the 18 marketing year starts. So right now we're in the 17-18 marketing year. We're not going to start the 18 marketing year, 18-19, that this applies to until August 1st. Okay, so let's walk through an example. So let's say the U.S. upland cotton lint marketing year average price is 69 cents a pound. Let's say the U.S. cottonseed marketing year average price is $150 a ton. And again, just to be clear, this is a national number. This is not regional. So I know you know the cottonseed prices vary from region to region, but this is a combined national price. Okay, U.S. upland cotton lint production. It's 20.57 million bales. That's the current estimate for the 2017 marketing year. We have to convert that to pounds, so you divide it, or you multiply it by 480, and you get pounds. Cottonseed production is reported in tons, so we need to convert the tons to pounds. So we do the same thing. We have both lint and cottonseed production in pounds, and we add that together. Now, I'm going to keep going through this, but I just want you to be clear that you're not going to have to calculate this on your own at any point in time unless you just really want to. So we will have this on the website, and we'll keep track of it monthly, but just so that you understand where the numbers are coming from, I wanted to go through this. Okay, so we get to the seed cotton marketing year average price. We're going to plug in those numbers. So the 9.8 billion, that would be lint production in pounds. We multiply that by the lint price, plus the cottonseed production in pounds, multiply that by the cottonseed price, and then divide it by the total pounds. So really what we're trying to do is we're trying to weight lint production, and we're trying to weight seed production. And so that's what we do when we get down to the very bottom line, and you'll see 0.4233. That's going to be the weight in this example for lint. So we're going to take that weight, multiply it by the lint price, take the cottonseed weight of 0.5767, and multiply that by the cottonseed price. And then after we do all that, we get the seed cotton marketing year average price of 33.53 cents. Okay, so everybody feel like you can go out and do this calculation now? Okay, good. So again, we will, once we get into the marketing year, I encourage you to keep track of what we post on the website, and you can go and see all this information as well. Okay, so just to give you an idea, if we looked historically at where seed cotton prices have been, the red line would be the lint price. The blue line would be the seed cotton, so that's the combined lint and cottonseed. And then the cottonseed is the gray line, so down at the bottom. So you see the blue line in the middle of the two. It's a combination of the two. And what I will point out is we take a look at the 2017 number. I think I have a pointer. Yeah. Okay, so 17 would be right here, right next to 16. You see that the lint price actually goes up a little bit from 16 to 17. You see that the cottonseed price goes down a little bit from 16 to 17. And then if we look at seed cotton, it's actually pulled down a little bit because of that lower cottonseed price. Now, the green line would be the reference price of 36.7 cents. So anytime the seed cotton price is below the reference price, that's when there would be a payment. So you can take a look here. You can count a couple years right in here where the seed cotton price was higher than the reference price of 36.7. And then this black dotted line would be the price floor, and that's 25 cents. So there is a floor on how high the payments can be under the, and this would be under the PLC program. There's a floor. So if the seed cotton marketing or average price came in below 25 cents, we would use 25 cents because there's a certain payment limit where it can't go any higher than that. Okay, now we're going to get into the super tiny numbers. So I highly suggest, if you've got this presentation in front of you, you might also want to get out your glasses because it's even small on the one you got in front of you too. But again, this is all on our website. There's actually an Excel spreadsheet on our website if you happen to want to go download it and look at it a little closer or anything like that. But this shows you at different lint marketing or average prices and different cottonseed marketing or average prices what the seed cotton combined price would be. Okay, so in the example that we just went through, we used a lint marketing or average price of 69 cents. We used a cottonseed marketing or average price of $150 a ton. So how you use this spreadsheet, you go find where those two meet. It's going to be that number right there in red. So that's 33.53 cents. That's the number we just calculated in that long example a few slides ago. But what this is really useful for is that, and we will continue to update this throughout the marketing year once we get into the 18 marketing year, is that you can just go look at this and get an idea of what the price would be, and then I'm going to do a similar one for the payment so that you don't have to go through all those calculations. You can just kind of look at this and figure that out. Okay, so as an example, let's say that the lint marketing or average price was 61 cents. And let's say that the cottonseed marketing or average price was still 150. So let's go where those two meet up. And you got 0.301, so 30 cents. So do you kind of follow how I'm coming up with that combined price? Because we've had questions about, well, what lint price, what level am I protected at? Well, it's not as simple as that, because you're protected at different levels of lint and cottonseed. So the cottonseed price could be higher while the lint price may be lower, or vice versa. Now, so what you would do to figure out where a payment would be, anywhere on this chart where the price, the seed cotton marketing or average price, is below 0.367, which is the reference price, then there would be a payment. So on this, you can see here's a 0.367, here's a 0.376. So down in this range, there would be no payment because, again, the lint price would be higher and the cottonseed price would be higher. Now, I do also want to point out this chart shows 51 cents to 77 and then 140 to 260. That's just numbers we put in there that would fit on here. Of course, it would go to whatever the cottonseed price or the lint marketing or average price would be. So just to keep that in mind, we're not limiting it to a bottom of 140 or anything. It's just that's kind of what fit on the spreadsheet. Okay, so let's talk about the seed cotton payment yield. The seed cotton yield is the lint yield plus the cottonseed yield. And this is also equal to 2.4 times the lint yield. And I'm going to kind of walk through how we got that 2.4, because I know we've had a lot of questions about it. It's easier just to think about, take your CCP yield, and we'll go over this in a minute too. You'll have the opportunity to update your CCP yield, your countercyclical payment yield. And we're going to take that yield times 2.4, and that's going to be your seed cotton yield. And how do we get 2.4? Well, the cottonseed yield is determined as 1.4 times the lint yield. And we use this factor because it's consistent with what's used in crop insurance. And we'll see a little bit more on the next slide. So the upland cotton lint payment yield is going to be the higher of your CCP lint yield or your updated lint yield. And just as at the beginning of the 14 Farm Bill, with the other covered commodities, you're going to have a one-time opportunity to update the payment yield for upland cotton. And that's going to be based on 90% of the average of the 2008 to 2012 actual yields. It's not going to count years in which cotton was not grown. And again, if any of you did this for other covered commodities in the 14 Farm Bill, this will be exactly the same. And before I get off of that for a minute, we've had a lot of questions too of why are we still using 2008 to 2012? It seems like a long time ago. And again, that's the option that the other commodities had in the 14 Farm Bill, and we had to be consistent with the other commodities. Okay, so let's say we have a cotton lint yield of 800 pounds per acre. So the pounds of cottonseed is going to be 1.4 times 800. And that's going to be 1,120 pounds per acre. So the seed cotton payment yield is going to be adding the two together. So we're going to have 800 plus 1,120. So we get a seed cotton payment yield of 1,920. This is also equal to 2.4 times 800. So when you keep seeing that 2.4, it's just kind of the easy version of getting to it. So you're going to take your CCP yield or your updated yield, multiply that by 2.4, and that's going to be your seed cotton payment yield used for the PLC program. Okay, so a payment will be made under the PLC program when the reference price exceeds the higher of the marketing year average price and the price floor. So how we get the payment rate, we take the reference price minus the higher of the marketing year average price, the price floor. And there is no marketing loan for seed cotton. The marketing loan for upland cotton lint remains the same as it was. With other covered commodities that have a PLC and an ART program, that price floor right there is actually the marketing loan rate. So for seed cotton, we had to establish a different price floor other than the marketing loan rate because there's not a marketing loan for seed cotton. Okay, the seed cotton payment rate will be 0 if the seed cotton marketing year average price is higher than 36.7 cents. And that's what I talked about on that spreadsheet that I just showed you. Anywhere you look on that spreadsheet, if it's below 36.7 cents, then a PLC payment would be made. Okay, it's paid on 85% of the decoupled seed cotton base. So which means it's paid on base acres, it's not tied to what you plant, whether or not you plant cotton or not. And the 85% is consistent with the PLC and ART programs for the other covered commodities in the Farm Bill. They're also all paid on 85%. So the payment would be the PLC payment rate times the payment yield, and that's where it's your CCP yield times 2.4 times 85%. And then we multiply that by your base acres. Okay, so let's walk through a payment example. So in the example we just went through, we calculated the seed cotton marketing year average price to be 33.53 cents. So the seed cotton PLC payment rate is going to be the reference price of 36.7 minus the higher of 33.53 and then the price floor of 25 cents. So then we get the payment rate. We take the payment rate, multiply it by your seed cotton lint yield. I said that wrong. Your seed cotton payment yield. It's like a tongue twister up here. Times 85%, and you get a payment of $51.73 per acre. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is we have that price floor in there, and this sets the maximum PLC payment, again, under this example. So to get the maximum PLC payment, we take the reference price, 36.7 cents, minus the price floor, times your payment yield, times 85%, and the maximum PLC payment would be $190.94. So if that price came in lower than 33.53, we're going to keep raising this payment amount. And again, the maximum in this example is going to be 190. Now, I'm going to also go through an ARC example, and I want you to pay attention to this in particular. I want you to pay attention to the PLC maximum payment rate, and then I want you to pay attention to the ARC maximum payment rate. Okay, now the ARC program, I've went through kind of all the calculations on your slides and then on here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all of this because it's a lot to take in. There's a lot of moving parts with the ART program, and you'll probably want me to just stop talking if I kept going through all of it. So the basics of the program is that the ART County program provides revenue loss coverage at the county level. So just like other covered commodities that are in ARC, and that would be a lot of corn and a lot of soybeans, it's coverage at the county level. So there has to be a county revenue loss for ARC to trigger a payment. Now, the one thing I do want to point out too about ARC, so the ARC guarantee, it's going to be 86% times the benchmark revenue. How do we get the benchmark revenue? Well, we're going to take the previous 5 years' price, and we're going to average those 5 years, dropping the highest and the lowest one, and that's actually the Olympic average. We're going to do the same thing for the 5-year county yield, and then we're going to multiply them together, and then we're going to have the benchmark revenue. Now, one thing that is good about this is that if any of those marketing year prices in those 5 years is below the reference price of 36.7 cents, we substitute that reference price in. So it basically increases the benchmark revenue. So that's a good thing. But in order to have a payment, you have to at least have a loss of 14% to get down to this level. So again, it's a little bit different program than PLC, and when you're making your decisions, because you will have a decision between ARC and PLC, you just need to think about how the programs work and which one seems to be a better fit. The other thing, not such a big deal this 2018 crop year for cotton, but with ARC for some of the other covered commodities, you'll notice that the guarantee has went down over the past 5 years because prices have continued to go down. So you'll see if you have ARC for soybeans or corn in particular, the guarantee has continued to go down so that the payments are going to be much lower for 2017 and 2018. Okay, so again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all this. It's here if you want to understand kind of how the calculations are done. But basically what I did, use the same seed cotton marketing year average price of 33.53 that I calculated for PLC. Then I just picked a random county. I took some county yields for the last 5 years, and then I put in an actual county yield for 2018. Now keep in mind, the ARC payment will vary based on what that county yield is. So it's hard for me to tell you, this is exactly what the ARC payment would be because we have to know the county yield, and then of course we have to know the price. But in my example where we're basically comparing PLC to ARC for this one county, you can see that the ARC payment comes in at $2.84 per acre. The maximum ARC payment, again, assuming that price is lower or the county yield was lower, the maximum ARC county payment is $75.26 an acre. So again, ARC will vary based on your county and what the county yield is for 2018, but I just wanted to make sure you know that you do have a choice, and this is kind of how both of them work. Okay, so now let's talk about seed cotton base acres. Yeah, we are nowhere close to your numbering on the handouts. Okay, so it's established through the conversion of generic base acres. Generic base acres are not in effect beginning with the 2018 crop. So there will be no more generic base acres in this 14 Farm Bill or in the 18 Farm Bill or any other Farm Bill at this point. So any farms that have generic base and did not plant a covered commodity, including cotton, from 2009 to 2016, those generic base acres will become unassigned crop base and ineligible for ARC or PLC. Now, during that 2009 to 2016 time period, if 1 acre of one covered commodity was planted in any one of those years, you would still qualify. So you have to have planted no covered commodity at all from 9 to 2016. And again, you don't have to plant in every year. It's a pretty minimal requirement, but again, if the land has not been in crop production for a long time, then that land could become, if it has generic base, it could become unassigned. Okay, so your choices, if you qualify and you're able to convert the generic base, and this will likely be most of you, you're going to have 2 options. Option 1, seed cotton base would equal the higher of 2009 to 12 average seed cotton plantings, or 80% of generic base. You can't exceed the total generic base. So whichever one is higher. If your 2009 to 12 average seed cotton plantings was higher, you would use that. If it's not, you could choose the 80% of generic. The remaining 20% would become unassigned and ineligible for ARC or PLC payments.
That's a simple average, too.
And that is a simple average from 9 to 12. Or you can choose option 2. You can convert generic base proportionally based on 2009 to 12 average plantings of cotton and other covered commodities. So this would be the option to choose if you didn't want just seed cotton base. So if you've planted other commodities from 9 to 12 and you would like to get more base of other crops, then you can do so under option 2. And so this will be a farm by farm decision that you can decide what you want to do with the generic base. Okay, so we're going to walk through some examples. So on this farm, total generic base is 500 acres. 2009 to 12 average planted acres were cotton, 300 acres, corn, 200, peanuts, 200, soybeans, 100. So total covered commodities planted from 9 to 12 would be 800. Okay, so option 1. You're going to take the higher of 2009 to 12 average planted cotton acres, and that was 300. Or 80% times the 500 generic base, and that's going to be 400. So in this example, seed cotton base is going to be 400, unassigned base is going to be 100. Okay, that's option 1. I'll give you a second to let it sink in. Okay, option 2. I'm only going to do this chart once and then we're going to go through the other ones pretty quickly, but I wanted you to have this for reference to go back and look at on how the allocation is going to take place. This is just like the choice and the base allocation that you had for other covered commodities during the 2014 Farm Bill implementation. But I know that was several years ago, so those of you who did that may have forgotten, because I had to go back and review it too. Okay, so we take your planted and considered planted acres from 2009 to 2012. We had cotton, corn, peanuts, and soybeans. In some years, 0 acres was planted. So you see soybeans, you had 150 in 2009, 0 in 2010, 250 in 2011, and then 0 in 2012. You average the 4 of those. So you take the average across those 4 years. So you're going to take, basically what I'm getting at is you count the zeros here. So you're going to average across the 4 years and you end up with 100 for the average soybean acres. So you just average all of those, simple average, and you get the 300, 200, 100, 100, which I just showed you. Okay, now we're going to take the allocation percent. You planted 300 acres of cotton. You're going to divide that by the total 800 acres of covered commodities, and you're going to get 0.375 or 37.5%. You do the same thing for corn, same thing for peanuts, and the same thing for soybeans. So this is the percentage of your total planted covered commodities that you planted during 9 to 12. We're going to take each of those percentages and multiply it by your 500 acres of generic base. Everyone sort of following? I know this kind of gets to be a lot. So you had 37.5% was cotton, you multiply that by 500, you get 187.5 cotton acres. You do the same for corn, peanuts, and soybeans. The total is going to be 500 acres because that's how many generic base acres that you had. So under this option, there are no unassigned generic base acres. Okay, example 2. 500 generic base, 200 cotton from 9 to 12, 300 corn, 300 soybeans. So we have a total of 800 covered commodity acres planted from 9 to 12. Okay, option 1. We take the higher of the 9 to 12 average cotton acres, that's 200, or we take 80% times the 500 generic base, and that's going to be 400. So seed cotton base under option 1 would be 400. Unassigned base would be 100. Or option 2, we do what we just did on the previous slide. We allocate it to the covered commodities. And again, I did the same thing here that I worked out in that table. And we end up with 125 cotton, 187 corn, 187 soybeans. We allocate the full 500 acres of generic base. Okay, option 3. So this is example 3. Generic base of 500, cotton 500, wheat 200, sorghum 100. Same thing here. 2009 to 12 average planted cotton acres was 500. 80% times the 500 generic base acres is 400. So seed cotton base under this example is going to be 500 because you take the higher, and there would be no unassigned base. And you'll find that this can vary from farm to farm. This will vary regionally based on 9 to 12 planted acres versus generic base acres on which one's going to be higher. And then, of course, option 2, you're just going to allocate it to cotton, wheat, and sorghum. All right, example 4. Same generic base of 500, 450 cotton, 150 corn, 200 wheat. So total acres, 800. Nine to 12 average planted cotton, 450, 80% times the 500 generic base is 400. Again, seed cotton base would be 450. There would be 50 acres of unassigned base. Same thing here. You allocate the 500 acres across cotton, corn, and wheat. Okay, that one was pretty similar to the last one. Okay, the last two are a little bit different, so I want to go through them. Okay, generic base of 500, 2009 to 12 cotton, 600, corn, 200. Okay, option 1, 2009 to 12 average planted cotton of 600. 80% times the 500 generic base is 400. So I told you we take the higher of the two, but the maximum seed cotton base that you can have cannot be greater than generic base. So in this example, your seed cotton base is going to be 500 because you had 500 generic base. You can't have 600. Unassigned base would be 0. Okay, same thing, option 2. We allocate it to cotton or corn. Okay, last example. 500 acres of generic base, 9 to 12 cotton of 100 acres, corn of 100, alfalfa of 600. And alfalfa is a non-covered commodity. So when we add up total covered commodities, we only have 200 because we only add cotton and corn. Okay, under option 1, 2009 to 12 average planted cotton, 100. 80% times 500 generic base is 400. So seed cotton base would be 400, unassigned base would be 100. Option 2, we're going to allocate the full 500 acres of generic base to cotton and corn. Even though only 100 acres of cotton was planted and only 100 acres of corn. So total covered commodities was only 200. We're still allocating that full 500 acres. So half of it's going to go to cotton, half of it's going to go to corn, and you're going to end up with 250 acres of each for a total of 500 allocated base acres. So there would be no unassigned base. Okay, now it's time to get your slides out if you don't already have them out because we're getting even a little bit smaller here. So this is an example of the seed cotton PLC payment rates per base acre using different lint prices and different cottonseed prices and using a particular lint payment yield. Okay, so I've got several examples. The first one's 500, so I'll just start there. This spreadsheet is on our website as well, and you can actually go get it. If you have Excel, you can download it, and you can change that to whatever you want it to be, that 500, and then the whole spreadsheet will recalculate for you. So this 500 is multiplied by 2.4 to get to the seed cotton payment yield of 1,200. So again, this is the higher of the CCP yield or the updated yield. Multiply it by 2.4 and you get the seed cotton payment yield. So using the prices that we did earlier, 69 cents, $150 a ton, the payment would be $32 per base acre. And I told you that it's paid on 85% of base acres. I've already taken the 85% into this calculation. So I've already multiplied it by 85%. So you just take this number and multiply it by your seed cotton base acres. Now you can go across here and see, let's see if the lint price dropped to 61 cents. The cottonseed marketing year price stayed at 150. payment of $67 an acre. You go down here towards the bottom and the right, you see zeros. At those levels, you would have no payment per acre because either the lint price or the cottonseed price would be too high to trigger a payment. Okay, we'll just throw up 700 for a minute. The example that we used earlier, the payment would be $45 an acre. 800, $52 an acre. 1,000, $65 an acre. And then I think that's probably good. So those are all in your slides and again on the website if you want to go back and look at them. So let's talk about a few other details. For the 2018 crop, stacks may be purchased for upland cotton planted on a farm enrolled in the Seed Cotton PLC or ART program. Now I realize that we've already passed the stacks deadline for many areas. We have one sales closing date left of March 15th. But the key thing to know is that you can have stacks and be enrolled in PLC or ARC for the 2018 crop year. Now, in later crop years, you will not be able to be in both. So for 2019 and later, you would either have to choose stacks or you could enroll in PLC or ARC. And the intent of the legislation is to be able to choose on an annual basis whether you enroll in PLC or whether you purchase stacks. So let me back up for a second. For the 2018 crop year, you're going to make this one-time election for PLC or ARC. But then after you make the election, and this is the same as for the other covered commodities, you have to go back later and you actually have to enroll. So if you forget to enroll, guess what? No payment. So you want to make sure you elect and you enroll. But right now, the way that we see it happening is for later years, and again, this will be based on the language in the 18 Farm Bill, that you could either enroll, if you had previously elected PLC, you could enroll in PLC, or you could choose to purchase stacks on that farm, on that acres, if that's clear enough. Okay, so the non-recourse marketing loan is the same. The upland cotton loan rate is 52 cents for the 2018 crop. PLC and ARC payments are subject to the payment limit of $125,000. That also applies to other covered commodities other than peanuts. Okay, so the decisions. So we've got the payment yield update, the base update, and then PLC versus ARC. I want you to remember, and those of you who did this in the 14 Farm Bill, the landowners actually have to sign off on updating the payment yields, and it would be updated only if the updated yield is higher than the CCP yield. If it's not, then you're going to keep the CCP yield. The landowner also has to sign off on the base update options. Now, many people have a power of attorney, and it was valid for making those decisions and doing that for the landowner. For this 2018 crop year, you'll need to check to make sure that if you have a power of attorney, that it covers all decisions and that it's valid for this as well. And I just want to mention this because I know that there were some issues of people finding landowners or getting them to sign and things like that. Okay, the producer then makes the choice between PLC or ARC. And this is going to be an election only for the 2018 crop year on each farm with seed cotton base. And I say only because this is only 2018 would be the last year covered by the 14 Farm Bill. So the next decision will be included in the language with the 18 Farm Bill. And we've had a lot of questions about, will you get to make that election again for cotton and for other covered commodities? And again, I think we don't know. I mean, it's possible that you will get to make that election, but we don't know at this point, again, because that will be in the 2018 Farm Bill. Now, if all producers on a farm failed to make a unanimous election for PLC or ARC, the farm would be assumed to choose PLC for seed cotton. Okay, so the next steps, you want to gather similar information that you needed during the implementation of the 2014 Farm Bill. That's going to be yield records from 2008 to 2012. Planning history from 2009 to 2012. Now, your FSA office is going to have a lot of this. Some of the yield records you may be able to get from your crop insurance agent as well. But again, this data will be needed if you want to update yields. and then if you want to do the base update. So at the appropriate time, you're going to check with your local FSA office for additional information. And I assure you right now, your local FSA office is not ready for you to come in and start asking questions. They are working on it. USDA has been working on the implementation guidelines, and they hope to have those out fairly soon. We will be posting any information that we have on our website at www.cotton.org. And if you go there, there's kind of right on the main page, you'll see seed program information. But if you can't find it, you can always type it in the search engine, or you can just look under economics, government programs, and you'll find the seed cotton program. Okay, so that's all I have to cover, and now we will open it up to questions. And I'm going to make Craig answer every one of them because he wants to. I'm just kidding. Okay.
On your ARC for your county average, if you've got irrigated land, irrigated cotton versus non-irrigated, that average certainly is going to be different. How does that factor in?
It depends on whether the county accumulates or differentiates between irrigated and dry land, and it varies by the volume of data that they have, whether it's traditionally irrigated and traditionally dry land. If they're collecting the information that way, then you'll get an irrigated and dry land yield. If they haven't been, or if there's only a small amount of one practice or the other, chances are it's a blended yield. Let me just add one more point about the information. We believe that FSA will be sending you what they have in their records for yield and for planting history. I think the form number is 458, 578. That may be a form that's familiar to you, and I think they'll give you the opportunity to review those records and make sure that they're accurate. We've gotten a lot of questions about farms that have been recently taken over by a new tenant, and since you're going to have to go back over and find records for yield from 8 to 12, from planting history from 9 to 12, and I realize that's confusing that you got two different periods, but that's what's in the law, then you're going to have to try to reconcile that with your FSA office. We're not clear whether the FSA offices have been downloading the RMA yields for those tenants. So the good thing about cotton is you generally have good access to records, to yield records with your GIN. So you're going to kind of play that by situation based on who the tenants were and where that information is available. I want to emphasize again the power of attorney that Jody mentioned. You need to make sure your power of attorney, if you're acting on behalf of your landowner, is up to date and it encompasses all decisions. We feel like that will be something that you will be able to continue to use. Like everything we've said here today, we're giving you our interpretation of how the law was written. Mainly because we wrote the law, we had a lot of input into writing the act itself. But obviously, there are certain things for interpretation that are left up to the Farm Service Agency. The good news is, as Jody mentioned, there's a lot of similarities between the implementation of the seed cotton program and the conversion of base for generic base that track what you had to do for the 2014 Farm Bill for the other covered commodities. So that there should be some familiarity, some consistency in the FSA offices as to how they handled situations with yield update, with conversion. Now, of course, the difference with seed cotton is you have that 80% option that you wouldn't have had with the other commodities. But generally, and that's not by accident, we tried to stay as consistent with the 2014 Farm Bill with the other covered commodities as possible. One, to encourage Congress to pass it, but also to ease with the implementation. So hopefully there's some synergy there that will be familiar with the FSA offices. That remains to be seen. But that's some of the reason why you see some of these time periods. we tried to stay consistent with the 2014 Farm Bill, and hopefully that'll ease the implementation. Okay, with that, we're glad to take some questions. No questions? Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Any tips on how to get a landowner to sign this program over? You know,
Well,
it's hard for me.
Well, it's in the land. I mean, the question is if you have trouble with a landowner.
Yeah, you're a tenant and you want him to sign off on
And he
this
doesn't give you
program.
the power of attorney?
Every time I go to a landowner, they want to know what's in it for them.
Well, I think you can, well, you can show them what's in it for them by going to that spreadsheet with them. If they're a share rent landowner. If they're cash, what's in it for them is cash. So if you're a cash rent tenant, you don't have to get, well, you do have to get the landlord's attention on those first two decisions. So the easiest thing, of course, is to get power of attorney. Frankly, if a landowner doesn't make these decisions, he's devaluing the generic base on his farm. So that's the incentive to get it done.
Craig, the default, if the landowner doesn't do the base update?
Well, the default, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jody points out, if the landowner decides not to do the allocation, the option 2, in all these base allocations, the default is the 80% option. So in other words, because there's not an option to maintain generic base. That's not one of the choices. So if the landowner decides, I'm not going to go in and make this decision about option 1 or option 2, the default is option 1. 80% of that generic base becomes seed cotton base, and 20% of it becomes unassigned, excuse me. So that's right. That is
But option 1's the higher of.
But yeah, it's or the higher of. That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, it'd be the higher of 9 through 12 plantings or 80%. That's the default if the landowner doesn't make a decision. But it's really to the landowner's advantage and probably it's up to the tenant to explain to him what the advantages are. That facilitates the functionality of that farm.
Could you bake him some cookies or something?
Yeah, bake him some cookies. Right, yeah, David?
Craig, I've got a farm that I've irrigated since 2012. The history on it, though, showed that it was dry land. Will they let us change that to irrigated going forward on this on our generic base?
Well, there's no actual forward yields that are going to play into this calculation. It's going to be, you're either going to have the countercyclical payment yield that's currently on the farm, that every farm with generic base has one, or you're going to update it based on the actual yields in 8 through 12, not counting the years you didn't plant cotton, and take 90% of that number. So whatever happened since 2012, yield-wise, for PLC is not significant. Now, for ARC, it's a moving 5-year average. So, but that's the county. But really, the current yields really don't come into this calculation. The historic period of 8 through 12 will determine whether you update that countercyclical payment yield, lent yield, and then that gets converted to a seed cotton yield. You notice that it's a pretty significant seed cotton yield. That's a very high yield. That is by design. Any other questions?
That 20% that's unspecified, it's not generic anymore, it's just
It's
unspecified.
unassigned. That's good. The question is that if you chose, if the higher of the, if option 1, if your option 1, the higher of the 09 to 12 plantings or 80% was 80%, therefore you had unassigned base of 20. That is technically base, but it gets no payment. The same way the unplanted provision is. And again, just to go over that, and this only applies to the generic base conversion. If you did not plant on that farm, not just on the generic base, but on the farm itself, the FSA farm number, any covered commodity, including cotton, between 09 and 16, then you have base but no payment. Okay? 1 acre, 1 year, no unplanted provision. Now, there's a question, a legitimate question about land coming out of CRP. Land went into CRP in 2009, 10-year contract, or if it came out early, if it came out in 18, there's a question as to whether that was considered planted, or obviously there wasn't any covered commodity planted on the farm, so that's something we're still researching. That's a question, but it was a question there has to be some precedent, because that had to happen, well, not really, because there wasn't an unplanted provision in the previous bill, so that's something that has to be determined by FSA. Yes, sir.
The years you have zero cotton, if it gets you down to where you only had 2 years, that's okay.
For yield purpose, well, it goes into for two calculations, Jim. It goes into the calculation of the yield update. So let's say in between 08 and 12, you only planted cotton 2 years on that farm. Then you average just those 2 years production to compare 90% of that number to your current countercyclical payment yield. You don't count the zeros. But if you're trying to determine about generic base conversion, and you only planted, let's say, in 10 and 11, then you count the zeros.
And I mean, even if you didn't plant cotton from 8 to 12, but you did, meet the requirement that you planted a covered commodity from 9 to 16, I mean, you would still be eligible for either option 1 or option 2. And one other thing, just to be clear, if you choose option 2 and you allocate to the covered commodities, any base that you get of the other covered commodities is just going to add to your existing base of those commodities. We do not change anything about what you already have. We just add to it. So you gain some more wheat acres, it would be wheat added to what you already had after your reallocation in the 14 Farm Bill.
And that does bring up another point. The question was asked, let's say you picked option 2 on the farm and you reallocated to 3 different covered commodities: corn, peanuts, and, well, let's say corn, soybeans, and cotton. But you already had corn and soybean base on the farm. The question is, do you have to take the same election for the commodities that are already on the farm, or do you get to decide a different ARC or PLC decision for the new base, if you will, or the additional corn and soybean base? We're not sure about that answer. We believe likely you're going to get stuck with the decision you made for the base that was already on the farm, but that's a question that needs to be verified. Now, let's take another example. Let's say you had a farm that had wheat and corn base already on the farm, but in 09 through 12 you planted soybeans and cotton. So you decide you wanted to take the option 2 and reallocate it to corn and soybeans and cotton, seed cotton base. But you obviously didn't make an election already for soybeans because you didn't have any previous soybean base. That's another question. So I think I think then any new commodity, any new covered commodity, we would believe you'd have the option of PLC or ARC. But those are some particular questions that have to be answered, and there is precedent for that, because when the base was reallocated at the beginning of the 2014 Farm Bill, those circumstances came up. It just didn't involve cotton. So there should be some precedent for those answers.
But if you planted soybeans, if you're able to get soybeans because you planted them from 8 to 12, you would have already had some in the 14.
That's a good
Farm
point.
Bill reallocation.
That's right. So, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so that situation may not come up there.
I don't think
So you're gonna,
there'll be any new ones.
yeah, the only new one you would have would be seed cotton. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Seed cotton, you saying, Jody, that you might be adding to the bases that we
No.
already had?
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's take a farm. Let's take a farm that had that's a 500-acre farm, It already had 250 acres of soybean base and 250 acres of corn base. It had 500. It had what did I say? How big was the farm? I lost my example. Okay, yeah, so let's say you had a 1,000-acre farm. 250 acres was soybeans, 250 acres of corn, and 500 was generic. Okay? The only conversion you're going to make under this legislation is to convert the generic base. So it's either going to be all seed cotton base, or it's going to be proportionally allocated on what you planted on the whole farm. So if you were planting corn and soybeans and cotton, and you picked option 2, you would proportionally reallocate the generic base based on that ratio, and it would add to whatever you had for corn and soybeans previously, and plus add cotton. Does that fit your question? Okay. You're adding it to nothing in this bill affects the current decoupled covered commodity base that you have on the farm. This only changes or reallocates the generic base on your farm. Good question.
Greg, if you had a farm that had a tenant that's been growing cotton and a tenant that's been growing rice, you had a generic cotton base, or you had a cotton base to begin with and a rice base. Those two tenants can't agree on what to do with this reallocated base.
It's not the tenant.
It's the landowner. But if the landowner can't decide, then we believe the conversion of generic base would default to the 80%, or to the higher the plantings are 80%. Excuse me for interrupting, but I think it's really important that you now go start talking to your landowners, or better yet, get the power of attorney from your landowners so you're acting in their best interest.
I'm not gonna get that.
Okay, well, a lot of people have power of attorney, so but now's the time to start thinking about these decisions, because there are basic decisions that you can start thinking about now. Do I update my payment yield? Well, first off, do I have generic base? If you don't have generic base on the farm, skip questions 2 through 10. Okay? If you have generic base on the farm, you'll need to know if you want to update your payment yield for lint, for cotton lint, and you'll need the records for that. You'll need to decide which option you use for converting the generic base. So you'll need to know the planting history of the program crops that you planted on the farm, on the whole farm, not just on the generic base. You can start and then you got to decide PLC or ARC. Now, we're not telling you that you should take PLC over ARC, but I think when you run the numbers, okay?
Any retroactive payments for 16, 17 crop year cotton?
Okay, the question about retroactive payments, I assume you're referring to the gen cost share payments.
Yes.
Okay. We have been working on getting interim payments, interim economic relief in the form of gen cost share for 2016 and 17. We believe if we get it at all, it will be for the 2016 crop. The secretary is coming tomorrow to announce something. I'm going to leave it at that.
Which way is he leaning?
If you were the secretary, would you come all the way down here to say no? I'm just asking if you were the secretary. I'm not saying. Yeah. He asked to come and speak. He wanted to find the largest cotton gathering, and this was it.
We're by mistake.
So we'll just leave it at that. Come in the morning, and we're anticipating good news.
That's what time in the morning?
He supposed to speak at 8:45 in the same room downstairs that the ag update was this morning.
Ag update starts at 8:30 in the morning.
8:30. He's supposed to speak around 8:45. I assume he's speaking before Brock, I assume.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then he'll have a press conference afterwards, and he's gonna tour the gin show and do lots of other things.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Last question. So I've got a farm that I'd planted some wheat on, and I was thinking it'd be, I would pick a PLC payment up off of that. Now then, that would be an 18 payment, so I don't have generic base now once I convert, so, and they're decoupled payments, so you understand my question, it's almost like,
No, not
can I draw them
exactly.
both?
Okay, so let's see if I can reconstruct your question.
Yeah.
You have a farm that has generic base.
Yes.
Okay. You planted wheat on it during what period of time?
Well, I planted it this last winter,
Well, when did you plant 09 through 12?
It'd be cotton.
Okay. All just cotton? There was only
Just
cotton
cotton,
commodity
just
planted?
cotton, yeah.
All right. So your choices are gonna be pretty simple. On that FSA farm number, if in 09 through 12, the only program crop you planted was cotton, and let's say you planted all your generic base in cotton, then 100% of that generic base is gonna get converted to seed cotton, and then there's no more generic base. Is that?
Yeah, and so because of that, payments are decoupled, I'm gonna be looking at a payment on cotton from 18, not wheat under the generic base like I would have had.
That's right. In other words, there's no coupled payments in 2018. What you were able to do in 17 on your generic base goes away. For every customer. Well, yeah. For the 17 crop, you get a payment, but not for the 18 crop.
Okay. Yeah, so I will draw that payment on the 17th.
So we kind of screwed it because
That's what I was
crop year is
confused
considered planted. Yeah, so if you planted 17 wheat,
Yes.
then that's a 17 program.
Okay.
What you do in 18 would be affected by this bill.
And that 17 payment would come October of 2018.
It's the calendar year the crop was planted, correct?
For wheat,
That's right.
I think that's correct.
The calendar year the crop was planted.
Yeah, the crop year in which is marketed. Yeah. Okay, any further questions? Stay tuned. As we get updates on the implementation of this bill, we will keep them posted. I really advise you to follow those, to go over those slides, pull down those spreadsheets, figure in your numbers, and stay tuned for information tomorrow. Thank y'all for coming.